What is your most expensive hobby? Write in the comments what you think about this. Enjoy the show. Story 1, collecting physical media, specifically 4K discs. The format is in a really healthy state just now, which means every week there may be 2 to 4 new releases that I want to pick up. A cheap month is £200, but more and more often I'm having months of about £400. It's a lot of money to be sure, but I can comfortably afford it and just think that most people have some sort of thing they spend a bit too much on, whether it's clothes or weekly nights out or whatever. Story 2, taking my car to a racetrack for some laps. And I'm doing it in the cheapest way possible, using my daily driver, street tires, just a few events per year. It could be 1,000 times more expensive if I actually wanted to participate in amateur racing. I would need a dedicated track car, trailer, truck to tow the trailer. The car would get banged up a lot, so many more replacement parts and consumables. Story 3, I think collections in general. I don't collect just one thing, but many. Lovecraftian stuff, anime figures, games, Moomin mugs, Reddit avatars. It's not completely idiotic, though. Some things I bought in the past for 10E, for example, and now they sell for 300E1K. People actually pay for it. Not that I gain profit, because I want to keep them and admire them as pieces of art. They have brought so much joy in mundane life, but it's nice to know that opportunity exists if I ever need money. Some only continue to gain value as time goes by, especially limited pieces. Story 4, skydiving. Licensed jumper, not tandem. Obtaining your license is a few grand. Gear can cost upwards of 10K, and it's common to downsize and buy new, smaller, faster parachutes. A new parachute can cost tilde 4K. The jumps themselves aren't as expensive as you'd think, but it certainly adds up when you're jumping 150 plus per year, and those are relatively low numbers. Story 5, cycling, riding bikes. I have a garage full of bikes, all different kinds, road, gravel, mountain, fat, single speed, hybrid, etc. 2 of them cost $5K plus, others were $2,400, $1,200, etc. Cycling kits, clothing, are expensive. Bibs are usually more than $100. Nice mountain bike shirts are like $60 or $70. Cycling shoes, lots of different pairs for different purposes. Go on trips to go cycling, went to Bentonville to ride, frequently take weekend trips around the region. IDK how much I've spent on cycling, but it's worth it. Story 6, existing. The avatar has to eat, drink, needs electricity, Wi-Fi, electronic devices, water, clothes, shoes, accessories, a place to live, sleep, pay taxes, pay insurance, move around, private car, public transportation, and that's pretty much all the material things. Don't even get me started with the emotional needs. That money can't buy. Story 7, 3D printer. My other hobbies are running, hiking, and kayaking in a club with common boats and equipment. I never had the need for expensive clothing. I just use a cheap running clothes from Decathlon, a backpack that I use for commuting anyway, and dirt cheap barefoot shoes that last about a year for me. Since I only need the shoes for protection against glass shards and such, the cheapest ones are perfect for me as long as my feet fit comfortably into them. Story 8, Magic the Gathering. That being said, I'm very reasonable considering what I earn for a living and what I spend for this, roughly €50 every 3 months. I also bike, but it's mainly to go to work, so can I say it's a hobby? Or just a replacement of what I would have spent on my car? Stating this, it's much less expensive than a car. Story 9, movies. I just love film TV too, but it gets so expensive. I'm a huge horror fan and just love the whole video nasties era here in the UK, and much of that stuff is often getting some sort of fancy boutique release. DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, and of course the cinema and movies on demand and subscriptions, etc., etc. Ain't cheap. And then there's football. Can easily be a few £100 for me and the lad to go. Shirts at stupid prices, beer and burgers at a premium. It's all batshit really, lol. Just fortunate I can still enjoy these things. The latter more so as the prices seem to consistently go up and up and up. Story 10. I love coloring and making abstract drawings or chaos drawings. I use expensive markers/pencils/fine liners. I allow myself to buy one either when a color runs out or a new color when there's a special occasion. I use Winsor & Newton markers. I actually prefer them over Copic, Faber and Castell or Caran d'Ache pencils, and Molotow fine liners. Story 11. Astrophotography. I still only use a DSLR and a lens with a simple star tracker and a tripod. And plus all the smaller accessories needed like a focus mask, lens heater, remote shutter release, and so on cost me like €2,000. Now, if I want to step my game up, which I plan on doing, I would start with a dedicated astronomy camera. And a decent one would cost me about the same as my whole setup currently. Story 12, home labbing and self-hosting cloud services, etc. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can get by with low-end gear and virtualization emulation. I don't need 100 terabytes of redundant storage, battery backups, tape storage, and redundant multi-gig networking. But some technologies require many fast machines. Fast machines require cooling. It just kind of snowballs. The power bill, too. Watching a full rack of servers working at full tilt is just so satisfying. To me, emulating a data center on a Raspberry Pi would be comparable to being really into Lego, but only buying the tiny $14.99 sets. The bigger ones are way cooler. Also, Lego is pretty cool and gets expensive. And sewing once you get into the industrial overlock sewing machines. Story 13. Hunting. The initial purchases of the weapon, clothing, hunting property, stands to sit in and such are pretty big. At first you think this is all I need and I'm good. Fast forward year 2, well this new tree stand, $300, is way more light and comfortable. I'll have that. Year 3, I'm gonna start to run game cameras, $4,200 each to help me get that big buck. Year 4, still no buck. I need this cool new tree saddle so I'm ultra quiet and light, and a couple more pieces of hunting clothing and a new pair of boots. My point is, I could write out 4 more years of shit I buy and use but don't really need. But hey, it's my hobby, it makes me happy and keeps me grounded. If you don't have a hobby, get one. It's how you mentally exit the world around you and enter your own. Story 14. Season ticket holder to both the men's and women's professional soccer teams in my city, with parking as part of it. Even with a discount for having both, it's quite a bit each month. And most years I buy both home and away jerseys. This isn't Europe where there's one football club with a women's and a men's team. No, there's 2 separate identities. So that's 4 jerseys each year, plus accessories like scarves, hats, and all the other stuff like thermos tumblers and such. Story 15. First is gaming for sure. One part if it was the 3K plus USD PC build, and the other is 350 USD monthly average spendings on games. Be honest, am I a goner? Second is mountain biking. Professional bike costs around 4K here, and oh wow, how many times have I broken multiple bones? Hence medical fees and missing out on work, so technically yes, it is a lot all things considered. Anyone else adrenaline addict here? Story 16. Archery. Recurve bows have so many components. Handle, limbs, sights or scopes, bowstring, arrow rest, stabilizers, and more. Compound bows are, well, they have fewer components to purchase separately, but then the said fewer components are more expensive than Recurve's components, so much that a no-so professional full compound bow kit has a good chance of being more expensive than a professional Olympics-grade Recurve bow kit. And then arrows. Story 17. When I lived in Phoenix, there was a store for fabric remnants, whatever was left on a bolt from Joann's and such. Huge discount. My reflux column paid for itself after my third 25L wash. Now I can take all the time in the world to discover how to make my own Irish cream liqueurs. Only been at it for 6 months and my results continue to improve. Story 18. Aquascaping. If you want good quality equipment, it's not cheap. Plus then you start getting interested in rare plants and fish. And next thing you know, you're trying to justify spending $100 on tropical fish. And if you're actually taking care of your tank, that's cost in hours too. And that's the cheaper side of the aquarium hobby. Saltwater tanks are crazy expensive and most of the fish don't come with refunds if something happens. Story 19. Having ADHD and going all in with obsessions that I then do use once in a blue moon because we now have a toddler and my partner's been back to uni but graduating 'tis month. So life hasn't stopped for hobbies. In the space or 3 years I have, got into board games, pound 3K, play once a month at most. Miniature painting, pound 400 plus. Been over a year since I painted. D&D, 300 pounds on books, been over a year since played. Home gym, pound 2K. This is actually used weekly, so that's something. Funko Pops, pound 500. RC cars, pound 600. Story 20. Running. What's that? How expensive can running really be? It starts off cheap. Then you realize your shoes are too old and hurting your legs. So you buy a new pair, then 2. Then you need a watch to track your runs. And then a few sets of clothes to wear while you're running because the old stuff didn't feel amazing. Now you've entered a race, which is surprisingly expensive, $150 plus for a marathon, sometimes a lot more. And now you're up for travel, hotels, energy gels, a pair of race shoes. That's not even including the cost of personal training and the inevitable physiotherapist appointments. Then you do it all again. Fuck. I love it though. Story 21. Books. Just walking into a bookstore is a major trigger. While on a recent vacation, I was taken to a used bookstore. This place was crazy huge with some fantastic deals and some okay deals. Regardless, I spent nearly $100 on the books, 11 hardcovers and 14 paperbacks, and then another $30 to ship them home because the books wouldn't fit in my luggage. During the same trip, I spent another $50 at Barnes & Noble on some more books. I have no bookcase space left in my house, which means the purchase of another bookcase. My wife isn't thrilled that I have stacked books on the floor, as well as on pieces of furniture near the packed bookcase. I am absolutely hooked. I will read all the books I purchase at some point, but the time I can set aside to read isn't that high at this point in my life. I work from home currently. Audiobooks aren't an option because I can't listen to the audiobook and at the same time get my work done. Story 22. I spend around $4,000 annually just to play hockey. Every year, I'll replace bits of my gear too as it wears out or breaks, and I'll spend around $1,000 twice a year going away to tournaments around the country, so that probably puts me up over $7,000 annually. I also race karts. I haven't added up costs, out of sight, out of mind, but annually, entering events would be less than $1,000. Where the money goes out, however, is paying for the maintenance on my 2 motors, tires, I'll generally go through more than 10 sets a year, and travel accommodation when I'm racing out of town. I have no idea how much it is all really costing me, but I wouldn't be surprised if it surpassed $10K, and that's if I'm not replacing my gear, which again is something I'll do every couple years. And with all that, I'm actually considered a budget racer. Story 23, there's a few but 2 stand out. Badminton. Played competitively at a high level all my life, but now it's more for just recreation with some tournaments here and there. The equipment is expensive. Racket strings break often, and getting them restrung often burns a hole. The shuttlecocks are really expensive. They're essentially feathers strung together. A good quality tube of shuttles, 10 in each tube for X, will cost $50, and that tube will not last even a week. Latin dancing. I've been dancing salsa and bachata for over a year, and there's these congresses or festivals that take place all over the world. Days-long workshops with social parties every night. Passes for these festivals are no less than $300 and add to that flight and hotel bookings. Sigh. Story 24, photography. With both of these, it's easy to get gear acquisition syndrome, every once in a while. Sometimes you lose your inspiration and start feeling like, well, if I had X, maybe it would make me better at Y. Occasionally, a new piece of gear will breathe fresh air into things, but more often than not, you're just spending money because you're bored. Story 25, hunting. I spend upwards of $20K/wire doing it, and literally all my time off. The years my kids were born, I still spent all my leave from work hunting. It's about the most important thing I do for my mental health, so it's a priority. Fishing is expensive too. I spend about $58K/wire on that. If I added all my outdoor hobbies up, they'd be around $34-40K/year easy, but I'm happy so I don't beat myself up over it. Story 26. I honestly don't think anything comes close to modifying cars. Parts are expensive, labor is expensive if you can't do something yourself. Things wear out quick, things break. Shit will keep you broke forever. Now that I am a little older, I don't modify much anymore. Plus, what the point when a Tesla will smoke any gas car without even trying, LOL. Gas cars are so slow. Story 27. Restoring a house built in 1909. I'm currently living in it too, so it's maybe not a hobby, but I did spend almost $20K on wood to send through the router last year, when I could have feasibly gotten it all made at a local millwork shop for $15K, lumber included. I went to a local tool and die shop to get the $750 bits made so I could exactly match the current baseboard trim I have. Built a front door out of lumber from hand-selected boards from southern Wisconsin. The router does not like white oak very much. Tore down non-load-bearing wall in the entry from when it was a duplex to rebuild the staircase, plus handrail, plus newel post from boards. I'd guess living in a project house we want to restore costs $30-40K per year. I don't even really enjoy woodworking. I really hope it ends up being type 2 fun, where it sucks in the moment but is fun in retrospect. Other than that, used to be road biking. I worked in a bike shop in high school and got stuff at cost, then kept up those purchasing habits in and after university when I no longer got a discount. Currently, tabletop gaming. I have like 40 games still wrapped in plastic because the deals were too good to pass up. Future, stereos. I don't even have a great ear for differences in stereo setups, but something about sipping a glass of bourbon in my specially designed studio, listening to Velvet Underground and Nico on my Biogram 4002 and a $45K setup seems magical. Story 28, automotive. Self-explanatory, also not something you want to cheap out on anyway. Fish keeping. Once you have a tank and little ecosystem set up, maintaining it is pretty cheap unless you have salt water. But getting the tank, the substrate, the plants, the wood or rocks, the food for the fish and plants, the filtration and aeration and heating systems, the chemicals to make tap water safe, and of course the fish. Man, it's a lot of money and time spent to get it set up. Painting, also self-explanatory. Acrylic paint and decent canvas can be found for cheap, but oils and quality brushes are expensive. Story 29, 3 horses. thousands spent monthly to feed and board them. Vitamin supplements are a couple hundred. New shoes and hoof trims every 8 weeks is $350. One of my horses has a vet that comes to do acupuncture, craniosacral, massage, chiropractic, and laser every 2 months. Never mind the cost of tack, fly spray, blankets, shampoos, riding clothes, and normal vet bills. It's actually embarrassing what I spend. Luckily, I work my butt off to afford it, but it's terrible to add it all up. Story 30. People don't understand how expensive guns and ammo are. These gun guys with their lifted trucks shooting into a mound of dirt for 6 hours, I don't get how they can afford any of it. Ammo is insanely expensive for how much of it gets used up, and very quickly. The single reason I haven't purchased a Beretta 6 440 cal is that the price of 40 cal ammunition gives me an instant nosebleed. I bought a H&K 416-22 ALR because 22 LR is at cheap enough to buy buckets of without being too crazy expensive. I burned through 100 rounds between 4 magazines in about 3 minutes. If I did that with 40 cal, I'd be out about $1.50 plus just to shoot targets on owned property. Tack on range pricing and rentals if you're at an actual gun range. Extra credit, photography. Spend $4K on a camera and $2K on lenses just to say "dis pretty photo." Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.